joining me today. I am Hawkeye here at Maple Leafs Man Advantage, and I'm going to talk today about the 1971 NHL Playoffs. Lately, here it's January right now. We're getting hit with snow here, uh, and it's not melting; it's just accumulating here. So getting lots of snow. I've been watching football. The NFL playoffs are on, so um, I'm getting right into that. I think we're going to see Chiefs Eagles in the finals. We'll see what happens. Washington surprising a lot of people, including myself. They're in the the grouping of the final four teams there, and the Bills. Is this finally their year? Well, we're going to see. But anyways, to start off with, though, I'm actually reading a book. My wife gave it to me for my birthday. It's called Revival. It's dealing with the 1977-78 Toronto Maple Leafs and their run to the semifinal that year. They then got swept by the Montreal Canadiens. Uh, but it talks about more than just that. It really goes through hockey through the 70s and talks a lot about the WHA and Harold Ballard as well. It's a very interesting book to me. Highly recommended to any Leaf fan out there. And certainly any older fans too. They might get a real kick out of it. It's written by Gord Stellick, who was a GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs back when I was a kid in the late 80s, as well as Damian Cox, who was a hockey writer, I think for the Toronto Star. I think I remember reading his columns out of that paper. But it's really good. They talk about it answered a question for me about Bernie Perron and playing with the Leafs, and he's on this very team in the playoffs for the Leafs, 1971. In his final year in Toronto, he was making 25 grand, $25,000. Um, they didn't seem to really negotiate a new contract with him. Ballard was also getting a little cheap on paying him money that may have been owed, a couple $1,000s. And in the end, the WHA team, it became the Philadelphia Blazers, but that very team, I think they offered him $750,000 over 5 years to play with them in comparison to, I don't know what he was going to get in Toronto, nothing compared to that. So it was like night and day. And I think Perrant wanted to get out of Toronto anyways, and how he was treated. And in the end, they said his wife didn't like Toronto, so they traded him to the Flyers when he came back to the NHL. But I got to tell you, it all just starts with the first step. If it's a rocky road right there, that's where it all starts. And I feel that's where this all went horribly wrong with Perrant in Toronto. And they ended up trading him back to the Flyers. We'll get to that at some point very soon here. But, anyways, we are going to talk about the 1971 playoffs. And it's in the old system. So it's the second seeded team against the fourth. One plays three. Still going on like that. So the Leafs ended up in fourth place. They then were going to face the New York Rangers, who were in second and had a very, very good season. The Rangers did. They pulled in 109 points, so it was a great season. It's a big ask for the Leafs to play this Rangers team, who I imagine they're looking to finally get on a playoff run here. Maybe see how far they could get through here. The Rangers now were coached by Emile Francis. I think he was the GM as well at the time. He actually played net for the Rangers from 1948 through 52. A little bit, but he was certainly more known as the coach and GM of the Rangers. He'd been coaching them since the 1965-66 season, so he'd been there a while. Now, as well, during the 1968-69 season, boom, boom, Bernie Geoffrion, he coached for 43 games for the Rangers as well. I think he ended his playing career, I believe, the season prior to that with the Rangers. But Francis was there the rest of the time since 1965, 66. So far, the Rangers under Francis had not made it to the second round since being there, and had been exited out of the playoffs for 4 consecutive years in the playoffs. So they were looking to go. They had to be hungry here. Okay, let's get moving. Let's get into the playoffs here. Let's get out of the first round. So the Leafs needed to be ready for these Rangers. Um, they had two 30-goal scorers and five 20-goal scorers. They had some offense in New York, led with Dave Malone with 36 goals. Rod Gilbert had 30. Walt Kachuk and Jean Rattel, they both had 26. Vic Hadfield had 22. Former Leaf Bob Nevin had 21. And Ted Irvine, he had 20. Irvine also led the team in penalty minutes. He had 137. And as well, All-Star Brad Park, All-Star at the time, he was not afraid to mix things up. I've seen him play in some of these old games, and my oh my, he wasn't afraid to throw the gloves and get at it. He had 114 penalty minutes that season as well. Park also finished second in the Norris voting as top D man. Can you guess who the number one was? That's right, Bobby Orr. He was the number one man on defense. And in that, they had a great 1-2 punch with Eddie Jacquemin, who had a 922 save percentage, and Gilles Villeneuve, who had a 919 save percentage. So good combination in that for the Rangers here. The Rangers also led the league in goals against. So yeah, they did have a good 1-2 punch there. They only had 177 goals against them in the 78 games. That's under 2.3 goals a game. So your goaltender's got to be on. Your defense has got to be on. Good way to start that is get the puck in their zone. It really is. Get that offense going. And you may have to worry less about defense, but it's a big ask here for Toronto. Get the goals going and get the defense going here at the same time. Now, with the Leafs, as I said in an earlier episode, the Leafs had three 30-goal scorers. And Dave Keon, he had 38 goals. Norm Yellman had 34. And Paul Henderson, he had 30. So that's good. That's spread over a couple lines there. That's good. They also had Ron Ellis with 24, and rookie Billy McMillan had 22. He was generally with Keon on his wing. And on defense for Toronto, they had some rough guys back there. They had Jim Dory, Rick Lee, Bob Bond back in Toronto on defense. And up front, you had Brian Spencer and Jim Harrison up front, so they can mix it up. And in net for the Toronto Maple Leafs, you had Jacques Plante, who had a spectacular 944 save percentage, and newly acquired Bernie Perron, who had a 913 save percentage on the season. Not bad either. Toronto's defense was really good this year. So here we go. So a good thing about this series, this is the opening series. I was able to see a couple of these games, and I'm going to give you my 10 cents or 2 cents, whatever cents on them, and give you a little reaction and what I saw, what I wrote down, and everything like that. But game one, I didn't see this one, but it was at Madison Square Garden. And for the Leafs in this game, both Keon and Henderson, they both had 2 goals apiece. But Vic Hadfield for the Rangers had 2 goals, and Kachuk popped in the game winner for the Rangers, giving them a tight 5-4 victory. Lots of goals in that game. So for the second game, I was able to see this one. Um, and the Rangers are going to bring Eddie Jackman. He's in net for them. He also had played game one. But now the Leafs, they're going to go with Bernie Perron. They went with Jacques Plante in the first one. So they're going to go with Perron here. The game that I saw was originally on CBC. So it was actually Ward Cornell who brought the game to us, and it was Bill Hewitt and Bob Bull. He did the commentating there. A couple of, well, I shouldn't say a couple, a few legends there doing this game here. So, from the early goings, the Rangers, they looked good and they had tight checking going on, not giving the Leafs much room to do what they wanted to with the puck. I really felt from watching this game that they needed to get the play um, where where if the puck is by the board, the defenseman would bury it or lay on it or just tuck it against the boards, and the ref would blow the whistle. They really need to get that out of the game. They obviously do. They don't do that in the game anymore. But they needed to get that out of the game. It really kind of kills the game, kills the momentum. They needed to get this out of the game. Um, yeah. Um, so yeah, because nowadays, like when it's been like that for very long time, many years. Where if the puck's along the boards, the refs yelling, "Okay, keep it moving, keep it moving, keep it moving," or you will be called for delay of game. Um, so I'm glad they got that out of there. Um, although the whole delay of the game, it's kind of like swinging the other way, where the puck sometimes I've noticed isn't moved as strongly as it should out of the corner, and the puck kind of stays there longer than it should. So I mean, it's not as bad as what we had here, but it still does kill momentum, kill the game a bit. But it's good for the person that put it in the boards. They want to kill the clock. So I've noticed that a little bit in the handful of games I have seen this year. I've noticed that once or twice, I think. But anyways, in this game, it was Gary Monahan who opened the scoring with a goal from the slot on a nifty pass from Dave Keon. Soon after, the Leafs were looking to take flight as Paul Henderson tapped one in off Normion and feathered one over to him. So it was 2-0 Toronto after the first period. Early in the second, Billy McMillan passed one over to Keon, who was in the worst place possible for the Rangers. That's right, he's in the slot. He backhanded the puck into the top of the net to make it 3-0 Toronto. They're taking a stranglehold in this game here. Now, I must say there were a lot of fights in this game. These guys did not like each other. I think there was five in total called by the refs over the course of the game. Now, I'm not trying to be funny here, but well, maybe just a little bit funny. Um, but do the Leafs in this current season have five fights in total? Right now, it's very different game. Um, so there you have it. There you have it. Um, but the Rangers were able to get on the score sheet here when former Leaf legend Tim Horton drove a hard one from the point, beating Perrant to make it 3-1. It seemed like Bruce McGregor looks to have been screening Perrant in front of the net as well. Whoop, there goes my calendar. Rangers really started applying the pressure on the Leafs, finally controlling the game again, like they had done in the first 10 minutes of the game. So they're trying to regain control of this game. In the third, on a giveaway by Pete Stemkowski, off his skate, Paul Henderson hammered one in from the high slot to make it 4-1 Toronto. Sorry about the calendar. I need to get a screw in the wall. My wife is downstairs sleeping, so we got to drill. We'll get to that. Just pretend that didn't happen, okay? We're all good. Um, Now, by this point, Henderson had four goals already in this series. So he was heating up, and this is great for Toronto. One of your guys, your big guys, he's giving it right now. Hadfield and Harrison went at it, and then a large melee ensued. Everybody's in it. Jackman even skated down the ice to pull Bernie Perrant off the pile of players. The fights were breaking out on the Madison Square Garden ice. Now, this is where it gets even crazier. Um, Perrant's mask, his goal mask, was thrown up into the crowd, the New York crowd, and they were looking for it, but no goalie mask materialized. Of course it didn't. You'll never find that mask. I think to this day they still don't know where that mask is. It's probably in somebody's basement now, and I can 100% guarantee you it's a New York Ranger fan. Incredibly, because of this, Jacques Plante had to go in the net. Perrant had one mask. He didn't have another one. He had to come out of the net. Incredible. What is crazier in my mind is no penalty came from this. Um, as to exactly how the mask got in the crowd. It's pretty simple math to figure out how that mask got up in the crowd. I didn't see the replay. The replays were not very good at this time, but it was definitely a New York Ranger. Got the mask and threw it up in the crowd. Due to the ref not giving a misconduct penalty for this action, my thought is, well, this is a fan's thought. Why not send a leaf down into the Ranger end, pull Jackman's mask off, and proceed to hide it somewhere? Maybe hide it on the bench, or there's only one ref out there, so I don't know. Like, it's not the right idea, but that's where my mind's going. But right on the next play, boom, the fights break out again. Why? I would say because the ref has lost control of this game. Um, that is absolute. The bench is clear. You cannot do that in hockey nowadays. I am glad they got rid of that. This is very dangerous, very violent hockey when everybody spills out on the ice and it's every man for themselves. It's pretty bad. So they went down to the Toronto zone and there was a brawl. Brad Park, who was in the penalty box, even spilled out onto the ice to get into the fight. Wow, that is crazy. Um, I do admit, though, I love this. You would never see this in hockey now. I know nobody died. No one lost their life in this one. So I knew that going in. It's going to be okay. But I got to tell you, when watching this or when I originally doing my blog, my blood was starting to boil at this point. I was getting quite angry. The refs had no control of this game. Even though the broadcasters are mentioning it multiple times that he has, no, he doesn't. This would not happen if he had control of the game, in my opinion. And the fights were getting more and more intense when they happened as well. And knowing how the game can work when things are getting amped up on every play or infractions become more and more serious as the game progresses. One of the reasons why the ref does not have control of the game. Um, there was a game this weekend. McDavid cross-checked, I think, Garland from Vancouver in the head. Myers actually at the same time cross-checked. I think it was Leon Draisaitl in the head at the same time. Brutal plays. I do not like seeing that guys getting cross-checked in the head or the face. It happens way too often in hockey now, um, and I don't like that at all. Especially now that we know about head injuries and everything like that. That's dangerous stuff. But that is because the ref had lost control of the game. He wasn't making calls that were blatantly obvious on the ice. So this is what's going to happen. McDavid lays the lumber to the guy's head. Um, just as an example, yes, the refs still cannot have. It still happens. They don't have control of the game as well. Um, Now, as well, the fact that the bench clearing brawls were looked at as okay at that time, or just part of the game, was not exactly the fault of the referee in this game. It's not his fault that you know that happened. That's a ruling that needs to come down that you cannot do that. It'll be a while, about 15 years or so before you cannot do that anymore. Um, but really, the culprit of this happening, in my opinion, is not calling a penalty on Perron's helmet being thrown in the crowd, giving a misconduct penalty for that. Um, yeah, to me, a wonderful chance to give the Rangers on sportsmanlike penalty at this point. For that, I would have been livid if I were a Leaf, and I think they were because we have bench clearing brawls going on. Therefore, a bench clearing brawl with every player involved is what happened on the next play, the very next play. Supposedly, fighting even broke out in the crowd, and police were sent into the crowd to break it up. Man, what a crazy game this was. They completed the game. Luckily, nobody died. Nobody committed murder, so that's also good. And the Leafs tied up the series at one by taking game two by a 4-1 score. And just to let you know, at the same time, Brad Park and Daryl Sittler of the Leafs, they both had 27 penalty minutes in this game. Vic Hadfield for the Rangers led everybody. He had 34. I think he had three fights in this game. Um, let's compare that to today's hockey and the Leafs. I might be missing the last game or two, but Jake McCabe and Max Domi led the Leafs with 32 penalty minutes. So this guy had more than they did. He had that in one game. That's how crazy and how many penalty minutes were handed out in this game. So game three, we're going to Toronto to Maple Leaf Gardens. Paul Henderson scored the power play game-winning goal and added an assist. That is 5 goals for him in 3 games for Paul now. That's awesome. Perron had 33 saves. He was very sharp. And the Leafs took the lead in the series by winning 3-1. Just think, in game one, the Leafs were actually ahead 4-2 before the Rangers stormed back and won 5-4. Uh, if they were able to hang on to that lead, um, they would be up 3-0 in this series. So game four is in Toronto. They're up 2-1 in the series. Could they look to really start bashing the Rangers around here? Wishful thinking from a Leaf fan and be up 3-1. See what happens. Sittler had 2 goals, including a power play marker, but for the Rangers, it was Dave Ballon scored the power play game winner and added an assist. Jackman had 27 saves for the win, and the Rangers tied the series back up, and they had a 4-2 win on Toronto Ice. So it's all tied up in two, and Game 5 was shipped back to New York. Here we go. Vic Hadfield had the winner, and Jackman had 24 saves. And the Rangers won it 3-1, and their defense is tightening up here. They're playing more like they were in the regular season with their defense. So the Leafs are down 3-2 now. Their backs are against the wall. And after mentioning how the Leafs could be looking very good in this series, here we go. We got to start winning games. We got to win 2 in a row, or we are out. So game six, sorry, shifts back to Toronto, back to Maple Leaf Gardens, and in net for the Rangers, you guessed it, it was Eddie Jackerman again, and for the Leafs, it was Jacques Plante. He's getting back in the net, and this game I actually did see as well, and it was actually shown on Leafs TV. I really enjoyed these games that were replayed on this channel. And Joe Bowen was the host. I love him. He's very much a Leaf fan, and if you are a Leaf fan, you're okay with that. I always kind of say, well, he was a legend, Danny Gallivan, but man, oh man, was he ever a Montreal Canadian fan? And I'm fine with that. I'm okay with you being a fan of the team, but don't spread it. Don't like always give that team the edge or all of the attention. You have to be even in your commentating. And boy, Gallivan was amazing at it. And I think Joe Bowen is great at it too, but he's very much a Leaf fan. But he was the host of these shows. Um, and he's back on the radio now with Jim Ralph. That's where I started. That's where I remember him was on the radio, Joe Bowen. Um, but for these games, he would have guests on the show. And this one, it was Jim McKenney, uh, Leafs defenseman. And yep, he was on this team at the time on defense. And McKenney said for his first training camp, he was 215 pounds when he came in. So Punch Imlach, then the coach and GM, sent him to the minors. and he would play him sparingly through Punch's time as the GM and coach in Toronto. And he was sort of buried there. He also said he roomed, I cannot believe this, with Don Cherry for 3 years. Don Cherry and Jim McKinney. I couldn't imagine those two together. It would be hilarious, those guys together. So, anyways, to the game. The scoring started when the Rangers got a dandy chance when they got a two-man breakaway. Both Kachuk and Nevin were coming in on Plante. Jacques made the save on Kachuk, but Nevin gobbled up the rebound and was able to pop it into the net, giving the Rangers a 1-0 lead. With this lead, the Rangers tightened their checking up, not giving Toronto much of a chance with the puck. The Leafs had a heck of a time trying to get the puck into their zone. Now, McKinney said captains like George Armstrong and Dave Keon led by example out on the ice. They weren't guys that would come in the room and yell and scream at the players. They led by example on the ice. A good example of that was Matt Sundin, I would say. He led by example on the ice as well. So we jump all the way to the third period in this game. And it was Jim McKinney himself who brought the puck into the Rangers zone. And he was able to put the puck past Jackman to tie the score up at 1. And guess what? We're off to overtime in game 6. In overtime, the excitement is amped right up, and the crowd is buzzing with hope. We're going to win this game and take it to New York for game 7. Unfortunately, the Rangers brought the puck back from their own zone on a 2-on-1. Bob Nevins scored his second of the night and gave the Rangers a 2-1 win and a 4-2 series win, advancing to the next round. So the Leaf season is over. They played a good round, but they were not able to outduel the New York Rangers, who are ready to finally get to the second round here. Now, looking at the Leafs, Paul Henderson led the way. He had 5 goals and 6 points in the series. Jim Harrison led the squad with 33 penalty minutes. Perron had both of the wins and had a very nice 923 save percentage and a 2.13 goals against average. Personally, the Leafs do not need to hang their heads here. The Rangers are a very good squad. Sure, they were eliminated in 6 games, but they were playing a tough opponent. Did not get pushed around, and quite possibly could have ended up with a better showing in the series if they could hang on to some leads. And hey, the Rangers showed up when they were behind the 8 ball in this series. So, as a Leaf fan, I know what happens next, but at the time, if I was a Leaf fan, I'm really hoping this would be a good learning experience for some of these defensemen. We have a very young defensive squad in Toronto, and they should feel confident what the future may bring to Toronto. Just think of this as a step and then move on. So we're going to look at another quarter final series at this point. We got a long video here. I apologize. But we're going to look at the Boston Bruins and the Montreal Canadiens. Boston, they were coming off a Stanley Cup victory and appeared to be taking the hockey world by storm again this series, coached by Tom Johnson. They led the league with their incredible 399 goals and were third in goals against with just 207. So that's, can you believe it? A 192 goal differential. That is gigantic, huge. This is incredible as well as they had Phil Esposito. He led the league with 76 goals and 152 points. Johnny Busick scored 51 goals, which is awesome to go along with 116 points. Kenny Hodge had 43 goals and 105 points. That's not. Bobby Orr had 37 goals, 102 assists, which led the league, and had 139 points. John McKenzie had 31 goals. Now, beyond that, they also had 5 other 20 goal scorers. Derek Sanderson with 29, Eddie Westfall with 25, Freddie Stanfield with 24, Wayne Carlton with 22, and Wayne Cashman with 21. In the end, that was a record at that time for the amount of 20 goal scorers on one team until the 1977-78 Boston Bruins when they had 11. That's amazing. Esposito, he had 24 power play goals. Busick had 22. Whew. The Bruins had an incredible 26 shorthanded goals during the regular season. Both Westfall and Donnie Marcotte, they led the team with 7 alone, each of them. That's 14 to name 2 guys. So mixing up, you got Don Ori, you got Sanderson, McKenzie, Hodge, Cashman. They could all mix it up for the Bruins. And in net, they had a great 1-2 punch. Jerry Cheevers, 27 wins. Eddie Johnston, he had 30 wins. So that's incredible. A tough team to try and beat. So Montreal may have their hands full here, but they like to score as well. They were second in the league with goals to Boston. They had 291. That's still 109 goals less, but then they were sixth with goals against with 216. So it's a 75 goal differential, which is pretty darn good. They were coached by Al McNeil, who just passed away recently. Um, and they had two 30 goal scorers in Yvon Cornway with 37 and Pete Mahovlich with 35. Jacques Lemaire had 28 and captain Jean Beliveau, still in Montreal, he had 25. Pete Mahovlich, John Ferguson, Terry Harper, and a couple of youngsters in Marc Tardif and Guy Lapointe. They might be able to counterbalance that Boston toughness with their own group of guys here. Um, and in net for Montreal, it was a 23-year-old rookie named Ken Dryden, who McNeil is going to be putting in the net here for Montreal. So game one was played at Boston Garden, and Dryden must have played well as he made 39 stops against these Bruins. But it was Cashman who had the game winner about halfway through the game. Cheevers, he played well too. He had 30 saves, and the Bruins win it 3-1. Game two must have been a very different game as the Bruins were leading 5-2 after 2 periods. In the end, though, Beliveau had 2 goals, including a power play marker and 2 assists. Montreal scored 5 goals in the third, and it took the game by a 7-5 score. They bounced back. Game three was at the Montreal Forum. Frank Mahovlich, he had 2 goals. Dryden made 37 saves. Montreal won 3-1 on home ice. Much more defensive game, less goals scored there. Game four, the Bruins responded as Orr he had a hat trick, including the game winner and the shorthanded empty netter. Cheevers made 26 saves, and the Bruins tied the series back up at 2 and won by a 5-2 score. Game five was back at Boston Garden, and the Bruins are ready to take the series lead. John McKenzie had the game winner, and also he had an assist. The Bruins took it by a 7-3 score. They're putting the puck in the net now and slammed the Habs back, boom, against the wall here, and needed just one more win to eliminate Montreal and advance to the second round. Montreal, they needed to regroup and bounce back on home ice. Both Pete Mahovlich and Henri Richard in Game 6 scored 2 goals apiece, while J.C. Tremblay scored the game winner. He had 2 assists as well. The Habs totally flipped the table and won by 8-3. Tying series up, and we're off to game 7. Montreal is putting the puck in the net now, too. So we're going to game 7 to Boston Garden. Winner takes all. See what happens here. This time it was Frank Mahovlich. He scored 2 goals and had an assist. And J.C. Tremblay again, he scored the game winner. He also had an assist. Ken Dryden must have played great as he had 46 saves for the win. The Habs took it by a 4-2 score and defeated the defending Stanley Cup winners by a 4-3 series win. Are going on, and the Stanley Cup is up for grabs now. And so there you go. We're going into the second round, or really the semifinals. There's only 3 rounds in the playoffs back then. So just looking at that series, that's the way it is. So the second round, the Habs are going to play the Minnesota North Stars for the very first time in the playoffs. Minnesota knocked off the St. Louis Blues in 6 games, who had been to the finals 3 years in a row. This is the third time these two had faced off, but this was the first time the North Stars were able to beat the Blues. Um, Former Leaf Bill Oliver and Jude Drouin had scored 3 goals apiece in the series against St. Louis. Barry Gibbs, he gobbled up 37 pims. And both Cesar Maniego, he had a 920 save percentage, and Gump Worsley, he had a 928 save percentage. They were both very effective against the Blues in that series. So the opening game of this series is going to be at the Montreal Forum. It was old timer, former half Gump Worsley. He's in net for the North Stars against this newcomer Ken Dryden, who just knocked off the Boston Bruins. It was Mark Tardif who scored 2 goals, while Jacques Lemaire popped in a hat trick, including the power play game winner. Dryden also had 26 saves, and the Habs went on to a 7-2 win. What a way to open the series with a big shellacking. Um, would this mean maybe that all that Montreal was just outduel the Bruins and coast their way to another Stanley Cup victory? Well, Minnesota may have shocked a few in the hockey world when they bounced right back after game 2 at the Forum. In the first period, they ended up scoring 4 unanswered goals just in the first period. Lunan, ended up getting the game winner, and Maniego had 32 saves. The North Stars skated off with a 6-3 victory. In game 3, Montreal flipped the tables. Jacques Leperrier scored 2 goals. Dryden made 30 saves, and Montreal rebounded with a 6-3 win of their own on the road, take the 2-1 series lead. Game 4 was in front of the home crowd in the semifinals from Minnesota, and Murray Oliver scored 2 goals, including a power play marker and an assist. Maniego must have played great as he made 35 saves. Minnesota bounced back with a 5-2 win. The series was all knotted up, and we're going back to Montreal. Um, the score for this game was rather lopsided, but Montreal did up scoring 5 of their goals in the third, like they did in that game against Boston. Um, Here we go. Pete Mahovlich ended up scoring 2 of their goals on the night as they retook the series lead, and they won 6-1. So they just need to win one more to knock off these North Stars. They were playing them tough. They must have been playing them tough here. And in that game, Dryden also had 26 saves. So game 6 was back in Minnesota, and the North Stars needed to bounce back to keep this series alive. Maniego, he played well. He grabbed 34 saves, but it was Réjean Houle who popped in the game winner with less than 7 minutes left, and the Habs won the game 3-2. Dryden had 30 saves for the win, so Montreal was off to the Stanley Cup Finals. There we go. Now, who are they going to play? The Chicago Blackhawks. So 2 of the original 6 teams are in the 1971 Stanley Cup Finals. Yeah, in the first round, Chicago beat the Philadelphia Flyers. They ended up sweeping them 4 straight, 1, 2, 3, 4. In that series, Bobby Hull scored 6 goals. 4 of them were on the power play. 2 of them were game winners. Esposito in those 4 games had a 939 save percentage. There you go. So the Hawks in the second round, they faced the New York Rangers. They had just beaten the Leafs. This must have been a hard fought series. It went the full 7 games. 3 of them, not four, 3 of them went into overtime. Whew. Game 6 was in triple overtime. But yes, the Hawks eliminated them in 7. Both Dennis Hall and Chico Mackey, they both had 4 goals apiece. And Esposito, his save percentage was even better in the series. It was a sparkling 942 against the Rangers. So we're in the finals. And it's Chicago Stadium where we start off. So the Chicago's got the home ice in this series. It took double overtime, and it was Jimmy Pappin, former Leaf, who scored 111 into that frame. He also had an assist. Esposito had 36 saves. Dryden must have played spectacular. He had 56 saves uh, for the loss. Montreal um, needed to step up as they were shot by 20 in game one. Um, so there you go. I think it was a 2-1 score. Um, Actually, no, sorry. Yeah. No, it was Lou and Gotti who had 2 goals and 2 assists for Chicago won on home ice by a 5-3 score in game two. So they started on home ice, Chicago did, and won both of their games. Excellent start for them. Montreal really needs to bring their game for game three, or Chicago will get a stranglehold in this series. So we're going to the Montreal Forum. And Chicago was ahead 2-0 after the first period, but Montreal ended up scoring 4 unanswered goals, including 2 power play goals from Frank Mahovlich. Montreal took it by a 4-2 score. And we're off to game four. And Montreal kept it coming as Yvon Cornway scored 2 goals, including a power play goal and an assist. Dryden had 30 saves, and Montreal won it 5-2. So the series is tied back up at 2, and we're heading to Chicago. I'm going to drink a bit of coffee here. This is a long video. My throat's getting dry. Mm. My coffee cup with the pretty kitty on it. So we're going to game five here. And there we go. So game five, back in Chicago, Dryden had 22 saves. But Dennis Hall scored the power play game winner less than 11 minutes into the game. And Esposito got the shutout. Montreal didn't score 1 goal. He had 31 saves. Chicago won it 2-0. Um, and Montreal, once again, their back is against the wall. Um, and they got to win 2 in a row, like they did against Boston, or they are going to be eliminated. Um, so game six was at the Montreal Forum. Jimmy Pappin for Chicago, he had 2 goals, but so did Pete Mahovlich for the Habs, including the shorthanded game winner as Montreal won it 4-3. And we're off to game seven of the finals. Whew. Nothing in hockey is much more exciting than that. Game seven in the Stanley Cup finals. As they say, anything can happen. See what happens here. Heroes are made in Game 7 Stanley Cup Finals, no doubt. And the cup is going to be handed out to somebody. So in Game 7 on home ice, Chicago, they were up 2-0. But Montreal stormed back and took the lead thanks to 2 goals from Henri Richard, including the game winner. Dryden also pulled in 31 saves, and Montreal won it 3-2 and took home the 1971 Stanley Cup. They won the cup. So looking closer at the Montreal players, it was Ken Dryden who ended up taking the Conn Smythe as the playoff MVP. He played, I think, 6 games in the regular season. That's all he's played, and he's taken home the Conn Smythe. So you know what's up for grabs next year, the Rookie of the Year. That's weird. His record in that he was 12-8. He had a very nice 914 save percentage, but he had a 3.01 goals against average. But looking at that save percentage, man, oh man, was he ever peppered with shots in these playoffs. He played very well in the finals. He had a 921 save percentage. So his game was getting better as they progressed through the playoffs here. I got to mention a couple other guys for the Habs. Like also, we had Frank Mahovlich. He had 14 goals and 27 points. That led the league in the playoffs in just 20 games. Pretty good. Jean Beliveau as well. He was 39 years old. He led the league. He had 16 assists. He also had 22 points in 20 games. And he's 39 years old. Pretty awesome. Pete Mahovlich, Frank's brother, he did real well too. He had 10 goals. Wasn't afraid of the penalty box. He had 43 penalty minutes as well. Overall, the Habs had 16 power play goals. Jacques Lemaire, he had 4 of them. So the Habs won the 1971 Stanley Cup. Bit of a shock. They ended up third in the East and went on to well, never have home ice advantage, and were able to. Well, sorry, they had home ice advantage against Minnesota. I'm sorry, I was thinking of the Rangers. That was Chicago. But they played on the road. They gave up the home ice a couple of times, including the finals, but were still able to take that Stanley Cup home. So there you have it. So once again, that was a long video. I apologize for anybody that wanted a nice little short 10-minute video. Not this time. But anyways, if you like my video, don't be afraid to hit the thumbs up down there. Subscribe. I've got other videos, lots more videos about the NHL, primarily the Leafs. But like this video, there's other uh, topics as well, like playoffs. I like to talk about that don't deal a whole lot with the Leafs sometimes. And if you want to comment on anything, go ahead and do so. I love talking hockey. But until next time, I know they didn't win the cup this year, but go, Leafs go.